Oh, are we ready? This is good. Okay. Okay. I call to order the January 2024 special meeting of the Compensation Committee. The time is now 7:01 p.m. Ms. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Scott.
Here.
Alderman Pabon.
Here.
Alderman Santiago.
Present.
3 present. You have a quorum.
Okay, I will call up each department by order. Please limit your presentation time to 5 minutes or less. The first is salary for discussion on the mayor's salary. Justin Dorsey was unable to make it tonight. Are there any comments? Okay, seeing none. The second speaker is Mary Progowski for Corporation Counsel.
Good evening. I have a little,
Thank you.
so we just tried to gather some information on the different towns in Connecticut, cities and towns that have a corporation council. So in front of you is that information that we did gather. Many of the corp council positions are full-time positions. It seems that ours has always been considered part-time, although it's not really written in the charter that it's part-time. So just for an analysis, Bristol has a part-time and the salary is $62,270. Danbury is $50,000. Milford is $92,000 for part-time. East Hartford, $62,000. Wallingford, $59,000, and West Hartford is $90,000. Up until this past November, our corp council, I believe, was at $30,000, $31,000 roughly. The salary was just increased to $50,000 as of November of 2023. So in comparison with some of these other salaries, it is low, but if you have any questions, that is the information that we have on the salary comparison.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Mary, is this for all the corporation council or just for Gennaro?
This is for corporation council positions, although in some towns they're called town attorney. But these are the positions that are appointed. They're not the full-time positions like my position is.
Yeah.
They're more like Gennaro's position, which is corp counsel. They're appointed by the mayor. That's what we were looking at. So for instance, Wallingford, it's the town attorney that's appointed by the mayor. There is, I think, a position that's called corporation counsel, but that's the full-time, permanent, hired by civil service type of position. So these positions are corp counsels that are appointed, but the full-time ones that you see, they are corp counsel positions, like Hartford, for instance. They're appointed, but it's a high salary. It's, you know, they're there full-time, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the third salary for discussion is the clerk of committees. Are there any comments? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. And the fourth speakers are Lucian Podluck and Peter Guston for the Register of Voters salary. Hello, Peter and Lucian.
Is it on now? Yep, there it is. Good evening. Peter Gostin, Registrar of Voters, Republican. Good evening, Chairwoman Scott, and then also Alderman Santiago and Pabon. We don't have a comparative chart because we've done that in the past years with prior compensation committees. I think my purpose anyways here is to alert you to what has been going on at the Capitol and the charges that registrars are going to have to encounter and administer to this current year. The page I gave you that looks like this, not the Excel spreadsheet, kind of lays out exactly what we're coming into. We have early voting for the first time ever in the state. And while over the years we've had many other duties added on to our charge, if you will, such as Election Day registration, motor vehicle registrations, that's been going on for a little while, online registrations as well, and a few other things that we have implemented on our own, such as electronic poll books and things to make things easier for us to track the votes and things for each election. This year, the presidential preference primary, which is in just another short, like 2.5 months, we have 4 days of early voting. All right, we're going to need to have staff there, probably 5 or 6 people at one or more locations. That will depend too on what the council decides. We have to get you involved in terms of reporting to the Secretary of State what your thoughts are, whether we need more than one location or not. But without getting too much in the weeds, we'll break it down by each early vote election, if you will, or a primary. So 4 days for the presidential preference primary. We may need 2 locations based on approximately, our best guess might be about 1,200 voters over 4 days. That's a lot of people to put through City Hall here. We do have Election Day registration, which is only for November. And even then, that we've seen 400 or 500, possibly more in one day, but that's one day. Okay, now you're looking at repeating that, 2, 3, 4 times. And we also have what's called same-day registration. New voters can register to vote, and then they have to come back the following day or so and then actually cast their ballot. Moving to the August primary, we've got 7 days now. Okay, the same scenarios about new voters, people switching party, or unaffiliateds joining a party to cast their ballots and things. There we figure maybe 900 voters over 7 days because August probably won't see the total turnout that April might because of presidential versus maybe state rep races or state senate, things like that. But then the big kahuna, if you will, is November. We got 14 days of early voting. All right, we will definitely need to use 2 locations throughout the city for that. Each of these, whichever places we utilize, we have to hardwire, if you will, to make sure that we are connected to the statewide database, the voter database. And, even a 20% turnout of those we expect to come out, which is usually around a 70% mark in total for presidentials. So if you took 20% of that, we're looking at almost 3,000 people that might take advantage of early voting over 14 days. It's a lot of traffic, and I don't think, frankly, City Hall could handle that. We have IT requirements, as you can see down there. We also have, personnel requirements, that we will have to figure out along the way. April's going to be a good testing ground for us to determine if we're guessing right, because really that's what it is. It's a guess on every registrar's part across the state as to what their needs are going to be. And then we have other supply issues, things like that. We're not totally sure how each of those ballots have to be handled. We know that they cannot be cast through tabulators, so we will need envelopes and repositories to keep track of all that stuff for either 4 days or 7 days or 14 days. And then to make matters worse, we've got a school closing at the end of June, which is Holmes Elementary, which is one of our 17 polling locations. We will have to do something and move those voters somewhere else. Most likely, based on the population, the number of voters that come out and things, we believe that because it's within a ward, you have to, remember, you have to stay within assembly district boundaries. We already have wards and things like that in 3 locations. We have Holmes, Pulaski, and St. Francis. But St. Francis is probably a good enough candidate to accept more traffic than Pulaski would be, since Pulaski's already the largest of the 3 in terms of turnout. As far as the compensation committee, your job is to evaluate the 3 primaries, the additional numerous duties that are going to be coming with this early voting. I'm sorry, you just don't know oh, my time is up. May I continue? A little bit, I'm almost done, but actually there's more to go, but if you could indulge me, please.
Okay.
All right, we're essentially running 25 additional election days, all right, instead of 3, because of all the early voting and the traffic and the people that we have to keep track of. It's basically 25 election days. That's an enormous responsibility that is being put on us this year, and we hope to get it right. We will do our absolute best, but we'll be learning along the way. Okay, I did want to just have you bring your attention this particular sheet, and as you know, or perhaps you will discover, there have been 2 raises in the past three years or so from the compensation committee. They stagger things because of the terms of office. Ours begin in January, others begin after the November elections, like the town clerk and tax collector, who used to be on that schedule. Now, one of them has already become a civil service position. The other one will be at the end of the next year. But if you look at the town clerk, the very first one I gave you, basically there's 3 different areas. One that I'm trying to keep track of. One is if we followed the adjustment for CPI since the year 2000, you'll see down at the bottom the aggregate of the position. Were we to follow that? Now, we never did, nor have we ever followed the middle column, which was 1186 contract, but those are the percentage increases based either on CPI or the 1186 contract. And you can see that in all 3 cases, all 3 positions are under where we would have been following even if it was a union schedule. But as I mentioned, the past 3 years, the aggregate for the town clerk has increased from the 2007 dollar amount that they were given a 5% increase. It's now up 39%. Okay, I looked at this current year's budget, I looked at last year's approved budget, and those are the salary numbers for that position. 39% increase. Next page, tax collector. I'm not going through all that again, but the aggregate there is a 29% adjustment increase for that person's salary or position. And our position, lastly, is at 19%. Given what I just went over with you regarding the early voting requirements and responsibilities, we believe that there is a real case to be made for increasing our amount to at least to the 29-30% level that the others would be. But know that I don't know if we can increase our pay during this term. We have to wait to January. I'm not sure. That's your job to take a look at, but I will yield the floor to Lucian since I've done enough talking at this point, but certainly please, ask me or now or later for any clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter and I had an agreement. He would do the play-by-play, I would do the color. And the color begins by saying, well, we thought we were going to have 25 additional days, but we're going to have actually 26. Apparently, there's going to be a couple of Democratic Town Committee primaries, and we're getting ready for that. That means an election on March 2nd, an election on, March 5th, an election on April 2nd, an election in August, an election in November, and that means recruiting poll workers, which has become harder and harder with the 17 polling places we have. But I thought, since I'm doing color, I'm kind of looking at Danny. In 1987, I was elected treasurer. In 1989, I was elected town clerk. In 1995, I was elected mayor. In 2003, I lost the mayor's job, so they felt sorry for me, and they gave me the clerk of committees job. So I speak from experience, having experienced all those positions. The one I really wasn't prepared for was the registrar of voters. When I was elected registrar of voters, I assumed that, this is what you got to do. You administer elections and you register voters, and that's the extent of it. But before that, I was also working at the state, at Secretary of State's office as I introduced the new voting machines into the state of Connecticut. I did over 300 demonstrations. I ran around all over the state and showed people how to vote the way we currently vote. Well, as Peter failed to mention, this year they're upgrading our voter registration system, and they're talking about introducing new voting machines again. What does that mean to you? That means that with all those positions that I mentioned to you, probably with the exception of the mayor, we spend more time here at City Hall. Now, we haven't talked about going to the high schools and registering voters than anybody else. We're here on weekends training approximately 150 poll workers. Those that don't show up, we wait for them at 5, 6 o'clock at night to train them individually, for those of you who haven't heard about that. Every election, we're required to train people. Every election, we're required to solicit workers. And every year we have a canvass, and every year we have inactive voters that become active, active voters that become inactive voters. We have people who move out of town. I spend most of my day today checking petitions for those who are out there petitioning to be on a town committee. And you'd be surprised at how many people, the mobility. So I don't know how to explain to you how. First of all, I want to congratulate you on getting elected. And I know for Willie and I know Francisco, they've been back there. But Candace, your first timer up here, and there's some tough decisions to be made. But I told Pete flat out, I think something in the range of 10,000 or 12,000 would be a fair amount to increase our salaries. And that would be immediately, because on time spent, I think hourly, if we were 1186 getting paid $40 an hour or whatever with the overtime, we'd be knocking down over $100,000 a year. And he did the play-by-play by giving you all these figures, but I'm speaking from experience. And again, the time we spend at City Hall, nobody, I don't think, spends that much time here doing what we do. We have a basement full of equipment that we need to maintain. We have, when we had the COVID episode, we had, sanitation units to buy. We had delivery issues. We had masks and gloves, and it's like this year is going to be just about the same, with 4 elections for me, 3 for Pete, new equipment coming in, new voter registration system coming in. And as you know, if the state puts it out there, it'll probably a malfunction. So here we go. So again, I think an increase would be fair, and my suggestion was to Pete that we asked for 10 grand, and I'll leave it at that. And I thank the committee for the time, for the extension of time, and thank you all for serving our great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucian. Are there any
Questions?
questions or comments?
All right, Pete, so we're not going by 1186 then?
No.
No.
No, it's just,
Because I thought last time with the compensation committee, you guys wanted to be in whatever a raise 1186 get, you guys should get. So how is that working now? I don't know.
How did it work with the town clerk and tax collector? Did they follow that? Because
I don't know
it's
how
only,
they-
it's only the current budget year that they would, if they are now civil service,
Yes.
okay?
yeah, we're just, it's a new ballgame, Alderman. They are now civil service, they'll be knocking down the money, and we'll be begging you for more.
Yeah,
And it's just not, it's not the level playing field anymore.
no,
And again, they don't have to run for election anymore, they don't have to do any of that stuff.
Their jobs really haven't deviated very much compared to what they've done in the past.
And I bring up, when I was town clerk, we had birth certificates and death certificates, and we had mortgages, and we had this and that. That hasn't really changed. Absentee ballots, Danny, treasurer, I'm sure that hasn't changed much. Signing, if we're going in debt with some bonding or something, you sign bond papers and a few other things, and I don't know. The finance department handles that. Clerk of committees, I think that has changed a little bit, but in our case, it seems like we're changing every year. And,
you guys, yeah.
yeah, that was a good question, but it no longer applies, let's put it that way.
So what is 1186 getting? A 4% raise or something?
2.25.
2.25? So what would that add to your salary? I'm not good at figuring that 2.25, so how much is
It's less than $30 a week.
$30 a week?
That's it.
Holy shit.
$1,500 a year.
Yeah.
Everybody in 1186 loves to see snow because they're getting double time, triple time.
Yeah.
They're on the clock 36, 48 hours in a row, and they're making vacation money while we're up here training poll workers.
All right, yeah. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there any other, thank you guys for the work that you do. Is there any questions, any more questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on, and our fifth speaker is Daniel Salerno, I'm sorry, I messed your name up, for treasurer salary.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and congratulations and welcome to your new position here, both on the council. Mr. Mayor Pro Tempore, also welcome and congratulations again on your position. The elder statesman, of course, is Alderman Pabon, who's been here probably as long as his part of the building's been here, so I just want to congratulate you all as well, and it's been a pleasure to serve with both of you in the previous years. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the treasurer's position from hindsight and some foresight, I hope. The honorable former mayor has served in many capacities, and one of them was the treasurer. So anything I say will never be an effort to try to undermine Lucian's position when he was treasurer during that period of time. When I started as treasurer, I'm going to say, and I never hold bars on this, that maybe the treasurer position is unnecessary to some people, except it's a general statute requirement as well as the charter requirement that most communities and municipalities have a treasurer. I like to always think of the position as being another set of eyes, even though it's generalist. And I don't prepare a budget as such. I'm involved with the budgetary process here and there, in part being historically been with the mayor's administration from that standpoint. the history of the treasurer, again, Lucian can probably even do much far better. Back in 1970, 1970s, the treasurer made about $20,000 a year, as I recall. In 1970, that was a lot of money. It was a full-time position, had an office, had all these other, if you will, perks of the office itself. Over the years, both Lucian and I have been through the history of that it would end up being weaned down to about to $12,000 at one time. I think it went to $7,500 and then went to a paltry $2,500. That's all that the treasurer historically had for many, many years, for a variety of reasons. Part of it is that the treasurer's position doesn't handle the day-to-day operations of the budget whatsoever. However, when people ask me what is it that you do, I said, if it's got a dollar sign next to it, I guess based upon the job description, there's nothing that prohibits me from asking questions and being involved in the budget, of which I try to do in a variety of ways. I like to think that over the years I've probably been, my first term was probably one of the most active treasurers for a variety of purposes. And I think other treasurers also had these roles, and these are some of the roles that we are. I'm a member and participate in the police and fire pension sessions that are held quarterly, for example. I am a member and a voting member of the Stanley Trust. Also, I am appointed by the mayor and the council to the Mattabesset District. Now, I say that in the sense that the Mattabesset District is one area of where our revenue goes. And so, we're looking at about $6.5 million a year, for example, that Mattabesset is on. And we have 4 other very competent members of the Mattabesset who represent the city. I also am a member of the Board of Managers of the New Britain Institute. Formerly, I had 2 terms there. I'm still a member of the Institute, and I am on the library board as an appointee of the mayor. These are not necessarily treasury roles. It's just the things that keep me active and involved and throughout. I've attended and I continue to attend the Board of Finance and Taxation meetings regularly. I've attended about 96 of them during my aldermanic years, as well as the last couple of years as treasurer. And those are kind of the things we do. And I've continued my Coffees for Open Government for 10 years. And part of that is exactly what happened last Saturday when we had copies of the audit report. We presented the budget from last year and trying to educate people through that process of what the budget is, what it entails, and how it carries on and what the process is. And again, that's sort of my own defined role as being a city treasurer, is that people don't know what I do or don't do, but they ask me lots of questions. So I better at least be on top of generalistically about the process, as well as to appreciate that there's everything that I can learn. Whatever I can learn, I can share with the general public whenever I have the opportunity. That sort of goes to that. I'm going to just go a little over from the standpoint that last year the council, in their benevolence, decided they wanted to give me a raise, or the position of treasurer a raise, and they went from $2,500 to $5,000. That's a stipend. That's what the treasurer's role receives. I didn't lobby for it. I didn't ask for it, and I didn't turn it back when I got it. So the point being is that that's the overall view of what the stipend position is. My position is that the treasurer's position is as active and involved in the budget as an administration permits that person to be. So the question becomes, in the future, how do we look at the treasurer's position? It's required by statute. Obviously, I'm involved in the bonding aspects. Whenever there's bank account changes, a variety of things, I, as the treasurer, must be there and sign off on them, depending on the blue pen or the black pen. I always like to say most things are done actually in blue versus black. And those are things I'm at the behest of the Board of Finance, of the Finance Director and the Finance Department whenever necessary. I have a tremendous respect for the Finance Department. They basically probably took over what the treasurers used to do in the day, in the horse and buggy days probably. And just so you know, the last 2 assignments that exist in the charter, which defines the description of what the treasurer is supposed to be doing, or what he or she would be responsible for, in that it talks that the two last amendments to the charter took place in 1929 and 1953. Those are the two identified timeframes of when the charter was actually changed for the treasurer's position. So, that's the status of what it is. It's required. It is needed. You could do very little, or you could do very much in the position. So I think that's really up to the council overall in terms of whether increases should be given or not. I don't profess that it's something that requires to go back to the day of $20,000 in the Treasury, certainly. But again, I'm not sure the treasurer back in 1970 did much more than we did as treasurers during that period of time. Might be a few more stamps, as the case would have been, as Lucian can tell you, stamping of paperwork. But that's the status of it. So keep in mind that it is also an elected position. It is the second and only remaining at-large, if you will, position in the city of New Britain. So as the mayor and the treasurer's position that actually run at this point as elected officials. So again, all of a sudden we are obligatory to what the questions that might come up by residents on anything that's budgetary in nature. So I try to familiar myself, and when I don't have answers, I'm always referring them to the proper authorities. And I entertain any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Danny.
All set?
Thanks for coming. Okay, so we're going to move on to our sixth speaker, who's Jessica Garatina for Common Council salary. Hello,
So I
Jessica,
might
thank
be
you.
a minute or less. So, I think the common council members are generally the most unrecognized, underappreciated portion of the city. The time commitment that you all put in is surreal. This is really like a part-time and possibly could be a full-time, depending on, like Danny Salerno said, how much you put into it. I mean, look at this week as an example. You have 4 nights of meetings. Friday's your only night off. I mean, these are people you all know, and I'm preaching to the choir since you're on the council, but your time commitment, time is money, time is all your effort. Not only do you have meetings, you have board and commission meetings. So you have common council meetings, common council subcommittee meetings, board and commission meetings. You have caucus meetings and constituent work, in addition to any other meetings that you have with department heads to try to get legislation passed. So I think it is very under-recognized just for the amount of time. And most people, I think, running for council don't realize how much time and effort is put into council work if you want to be really true to the constituents that put you here. And this council, everyone has put in a solid effort so far. Everyone is committed and everyone puts in a lot of time. I did supply you with a couple things. I did provide some comparables, although I don't, and I've done comparables, and it's very hard to compare city to city, town to town, because every city is unique. So the 2 cities that I did provide you with were Meriden and Bristol. Both of them pay their legislative bodies more, and both have less in population-wise. In addition, I also supplied you with Section 2-338 of the ordinances, which provides for the pay procedure, the compensation procedure for elected officials in there, for registrar of voters, for the mayor, for corporation council. There's automatic pay raises. I would suggest, I'm a big proponent in increasing the salary for council members for a myriad of reasons, but mostly the time commitment, but also to maybe think about including yourselves and the clerk of committee with the automatic raises as well.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any questions or comments? Is it? No? Okay. So seeing none, any other further discussions? Okay. Okay, so, may I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, so a motion by Santiago and then second by Parbone, Alderman Parbone. And I guess we're adjourned at, oh, all in favor? Any opposed? So I think we're all in favor, and we're going to adjourn at 7:36 PM. Thank you so much.